This anime was opened with the introduction of the main character, Makoto Meigi, one of the new students who receive an invitation to enter Hope's Peak Academy. The school consisted of the best students in all fields, and it was one of the best schools in the country. Every new student who entered here immediately got their own nickname or could be called Ultimates. Neji got the nickname Lucky Student because he got the invitation to the school. He had just entered the gate when he suddenly fainted. When he woke up, he was already in the classroom. All the windows had been covered with steel plates, and strangely enough, many cameras had been installed there. After that, he went to the gym. There, he met other new students. The first student was an eccentric guy with dreadlocks named Yasuhiro Hagakure, the clairvoyant. Shinichiro Fujisaki was a programmer. Hifumi Yamada, a fat guy who liked beautiful girls, was the fanfic creator. Kiyotaka Ishimori was the most disciplined guy, the moral compass. Oyasa Hina was the most cheerful girl among the others. She had a very positive vibe. The swimming pro, Mondo Owada, a reckless guy who didn't know the rules, was the biker gang leader. Tuko Fukawa, the acute introvert girl, the writing prodigy. Junko Enoshima, a cute but tough girl, the fashionista. Celestia Ludenberg, the fierce type of girl, the gambler. The athletic Leon Kuwata, the baseball star. Sakura Ogami, a muscular fighting girl, was the martial artist. Bakuya Togami was a guy who upholded his self-esteem, the affluent progeny. Sayaka Mizono was the dream girl of boys, the pop sensation. Sayaka used to be in the same middle school as Meiji. The last one was Kyoko Kirigiri, a mysterious girl whose nickname was still mysterious. With Meigi, the total number of new students in the room was 15 people. They all woke up together in an empty classroom. They were waiting for the welcoming ceremony for new students, which was written in the letter they read when they just woke up. While they were chatting, a black and white teddy bear named Monokuma appeared. He called himself the principal of the school, and he would explain the rules they must follow. All doors and windows in the school were sealed with steel plates. The way to get out of school or graduate from there was by killing one of their friends. Every time there was a murder, a class trial would be held. But on one condition: while they were having a class trial, they must not be discovered if they had killed someone. The trial aimed to reveal who the real killer was. Later, a vote would be held. If the answer was correct, the murderer would receive punishment. But if the answers from the voting were wrong, then the real killer could leave the school. Meanwhile, other students would receive punishment. Owada, who didn't believe the bear's words, instead thought it was a joke. He intended to destroy Monokuma, but before he could do that, the doll exploded. However, shortly after Monokuma exploded, the doll appeared again. That means no one could destroy the doll. Meanwhile, others still didn't believe in Monokuma. They tried to find a way out of the room. Floor 1 was the only open floor, while the other floors were still locked. Monokuma explained that the floors would open every time they succeeded in guessing the murderer in the class trial. Each student got an electronic handbook, which contained their data and other information. They also get their own rooms. Even in the kitchen, there was a lot of food that would be refilled every day. The next day, they still didn't know how to get out of there. So they carried out normal activities. Monokuma appeared and met them all to explain that they couldn't rely on the police or anyone else to look for them because no one would come to save them. There had been no murders for 2 days. Finally, Monokuma asked them all to go to the audio-visual room. When they arrived in the room, they were all shown a scary video, and it made them want to leave the school even more. Mizono, who saw the video, looked very scared. Neji chased her and tried to calm her down. He promised Mizono that he would get Mizono out of there. They all finally returned to their respective rooms. In the room, there was also a CCTV camera and a box of tools. Only the girls' bathroom could be closed. It turned out that Neji found his bathroom door difficult to open. The door had to be lifted a little before it could be opened. Suddenly, Mizono came to Neji's room and asked to change rooms. She felt afraid because someone was banging on her bedroom door. Therefore, tonight, Neji asked to exchange rooms with Neji. Neji agreed. He warned Mizono not to open the door carelessly, even to himself. The next day, they all gathered in the cafeteria while eating and meeting. They waited until midday, but Mizono didn't come. Neji, who was worried, finally came to Mizono's room. It turned out that the door to the room was not locked and the situation inside was very messy. Neji saw incision marks everywhere. Neji opened the bathroom door and saw Mizono lifeless, covered in blood on the floor. He saw a knife stuck in her stomach. Neji fainted, and when he woke up, he was in the gym. Neji thought it was all a dream. Not long after, Monokuma appeared and said that the perpetrator was among the students there. Junko was angry and did not accept Monokuma's words. She stepped on Monokuma's body. Not long after, she died because she was shot with many arrows as punishment. Junko immediately died. Those were the consequences if someone didn't follow Monokuma's rules. Monokuma gave them time to reveal who Mizono's killer was. They started negotiating to find Mizono's killer. Of course, the first person to be suspected was Negi because it happened in Negi's bathroom. Meiji had explained at length that they had swapped rooms the day before, but no one else believed it. Mizono's time of death was estimated to be around 1:30 a.m. The cause of death was a stab wound to the stomach. Apart from that, there were wounds on Mizono's palms. Meanwhile, on the wall, there was a message written by Mizono using her blood. The writing read 11,037. A decorative sword that was in Negi's room was also lying on the floor and broken. They then went to the trash room. There, they saw the remains of a burnt sleeve and also a fragment of a crystal ball. It turned out that Neji and Mizono's room markers had also been swapped. While investigating the audio-visual room, Neji found the CD in the trash can near Mizono's desk. Neji then put on the CD. He saw Mizono idol group dancing and ended up disbanding for some reason. Mizono would know that reason if she managed to leave that school. The first murder trial began. They all got on the elevator and headed to the courtroom. There were 13 students left. Kirigiri asked why there were 16 sitting in the courtroom. Meanwhile, there were a total of 15 new students. However, Monokuma explained that there was no special reason for that seat. Then the debate began to find Mizono's killer. Because the perpetrator's weapon was a kitchen knife, that meant the killer must have gone into the kitchen. Asahina said that it wasn't possible that Neji was the culprit. She and Ogami had been in the kitchen all night. They knew who the people who had entered the kitchen were. Asahina said that the only person who went to the kitchen that night was Mizono. That meant the victim herself was the one who took the knife in the kitchen. So the murderer might have attacked Mizono with a knife she brought herself. What cleared Neji of blame was the broken bathroom door handle. Neji shouldn't have to break the bathroom door because he already knew how to open it, which was by lifting it slightly. The murderer, who did not know how to open the door, assumed the door was locked. The murderer must have thought the room was Mizono's room. All the bathrooms in the men's rooms did not have locks. Meanwhile, Kirigiri apparently found an invitation message made by Mizono. It turned out that Mizono herself was the one who invited other people to enter her room, which was actually Negi's room. Mizono was also the one who had changed the nameplate in the room, so Mizono deliberately invited the murderer to her room to kill him. Mizono's reason for swapping rooms was so that Neji could become the accused person in the murder. Mizono would later be free from that school. Maybe Mizono's original intention was like that. However, the plan went backwards, because she was the one who had to die and was killed by the murderer. Neji then remembered the death message made by Mizono. If the writing were reversed 180 degrees, it would be written as Leon Kuwata. Liam certainly didn't want to be accused like that. To urge Leon, Kirigiri explained other evidence, especially the evidence in the trash room. There they found burnt sleeves and a broken crystal ball. The crystal ball turned out to belong to Hagakure. At night, the disposal room was closed. The only way to burn evidence was to throw it from outside the room. The way to activate the burning furnace was by throwing Hagakure's crystal ball towards the switch. The only person who could definitely throw well and hit the switch was Leon, a baseball player. Unfortunately, the cloth did not burn completely. There was one more piece of evidence that Leon couldn't deny. Each student in their room had a toolbox. Leon's tools must have used marks to damage the doorknob in Negi's bathroom. Finally, Leon couldn't argue anymore, and he admitted that he was the one who killed Mizono. Everyone voted against Leon, and it was proven that Leon was the murderer. Even though at that time he was defending himself, he still received punishment by being shot at with baseball balls using a machine until he finally died. The remaining 12 people were still alive. The next day, the room on the second floor opened. It contained a swimming pool, changing rooms for female and male students, and a gym. However, to be able to enter the changing room, they had to use their own pocketbook and had to be gender appropriate. On the second floor, there was also a library. There, Neji found a broken laptop and a letter saying that the school had been closed. However, Monokuma or whoever was behind all this used this school to lock them all up. The library became Togami's favorite room. Secretly, Fukawa always paid attention to Togami. She seemed crazy about him. However, Togami, with his sharp mouth, said that Fukawa's presence only disturbed the view. That evening, when Neji went to the cafeteria, he was asked by Owada and Ishimaru to be a judge. They both planned to compete in an endurance competition in the sauna room. Neji, who was tired of waiting for the two of them, decided to go to his room first. The next day, the two of them, who didn't seem to get along, instead became close friends. Suddenly, Monokuma asked them all to gather in the gym. Monokuma gave a letter to each student. The letter contained things that were embarrassing for every student. Monokuma would announce all those embarrassing things the next day if there were still no murders by tomorrow. Neji opened his letter, and it said that Neji had wet the bed when he was in 5th grade. However, on the other hand, Asahina didn't think someone would kill another person just because of something trivial like that. The next day, they found Fujizaki dead and crucified. In the pocketbook, there was information that the time of death was around 2 a.m. Fujisaki was found dead in the women's locker room on the second floor. The cause of death was a blunt object blow to the head. The weapon was a barbell. She was hung using a terminal cable from the library. Fujisaki's pocketbook turned out to be missing. A death message was also written next to Fujisaki's corpse, which read bloodbath fever. Togami just realized that the circumstances of Fujisaki's death were similar to those of the victims of genocider Seo, a serial killer who had recently been disturbing the city. Togami then took Negi to the library. It turned out there was information about genocider Seo, who after every kill would write a bloodbath fever using the victim's blood. It was also written there that it was possible that genocider Seo had a split personality and the victim was always male. Suddenly, Asahina came and said that there was something strange with Fukawa. She locked herself in her room and would only open the door if Togami came. When Togami was in front of her room, Fukawa just said that she couldn't keep her promise, but he asked them not to worry because she wouldn't let genocider Seo run around. Finally, the second trial began and 11 people still survived. Togami immediately stated that the murderer was definitely genocider Seo because the murder this time was similar to that of genocider Seo's victims. He said that genocider Seo was Tuko Fukawa, an introvert who didn't even dare to look at blood. Inside her was the personality of genocider Seo. It wasn't long before the personality emerged. However, she denied that she was not the murderer. She was always killed using scissors, while Fujikase's death was caused by a barbell blow. Meiji, on the other hand, suspected Togami because he had police files at his house. So he must have already known information about genocider Seo so he could imitate how to kill him. Moreover, the cable used to crucify Fujisaki came from the library, Togami's favorite place. Neji just realized that the place of the murder was not in the women's changing room, but in the men's changing room. The carpet in the women's dressing room should have traces of protein coffee that Ogami accidentally dropped. However, at the scene of the incident, the coffee residue was not on the carpet. That meant the perpetrator killed Fujisaki in the men's changing room. Then the posters and carpet were replaced with the carpet in the women's changing room. So if they could check, there would be coffee spills on the men's changing room carpet. They were confused about how Fujisaki could enter the men's changing room because it was clear that Monokuma had given the rule that the students were prohibited from entering the opposite sex's changing room. A pocketbook was required to enter there. It turned out after tracing it that Fujisaki was a man, but he deliberately dressed up like a woman. Everyone looked shocked except Kirigiri. She already knew beforehand because she examined Fujisaki's body. Fujisaki was able to enter the women's changing room because he used another dead person's pocketbook that was kept in the hall. It turned out that Liam's pocketbook had been damaged, and the murderer was using a woman's pocketbook. This proved that the murderer was a man. Celestia said that she saw Fujisaki before his death. She said that Fujisaki was carrying a bag containing sports clothes. This was where the murderer made a mistake. Owada suddenly knew that Fujisaki had taken a blue sports shirt, even though no one in the room said what color the sports clothes Fujisaki was carrying. Everyone was shocked, and Owada fell silent. It turned out the murderer was Mondo Owada. The chronology was that Fujisaki took a blue sports shirt from the warehouse. He then ran into Celestia. Later, Fujisaki went to the men's locker room and met Owada. Actually, at that time, Fujisaki wanted to ask Owada for helps so that he could become a stronger and truer man. The contents of the letter from Fujisaki stated that he was actually a man. Fujisaki said something that offended Owada, and Owada chose to kill him. Owada had an older brother who was a motorcycle gang boss. On the night of the motorcycle gang's boss change, an incident occurred. Owada, his brother, and the other members were touring. Owada instead drove recklessly and was almost hit by a truck. His brother had to make a sacrifice to save Owada. Owada felt jealous of Fujisaki because he actually wanted to make peace with his past. Meanwhile, Owada was still trapped by his guilt. That was the simple reason why he killed Fujisaki. Owada was given punishment by being tied to a motorbike and taken around in a cage. Owada finally died. Owada's best friend, Ishimaru, cried loudly because of Owada's death. The third floor was opened. There was an art room, physics lab, and recreation room. When they were gathered in the cafeteria, Ishimaru still seemed shocked by Owada's death. Monokuma asked them to go to the gym. Monokuma offered a promise of 10 billion yen for anyone who could graduate from the school. The next night, Asahina wanted to look for snacks in the kitchen and accidentally passed by the bathhouse. She peeked and accidentally saw something. Because she panicked, Asahina immediately ran and called the others. She said she saw Fujisaki's ghost. When they got there, they only found a damaged laptop that they had previously found. It turned out that there was no CCTV in the bathhouse, so it was safe if someone wanted to hide something there. It turned out that Fujisaki had repaired the laptop before he died. In the laptop, an AI called Alter Ego was planted, which aimed to help them all. Ishimaru, who saw this, apologized to Fujizaki for his death and his inability to stop Owada from killing Fujizaki. Alter Ego responded by giving Owada's face, saying that Ishimaru shouldn't have cried with feelings of guilt. A man's status was determined by the burden he had borne. Owada asked Ishimaru to get up and stop crying. Hearing this, Ishimaru became enthusiastic again to live life. Kirijiri then asked this AI to process the data on the laptop. It turned out that inside the laptop there was a photo of Owada, Fujisaki, and Leon joking with each other. Because they all felt like they didn't know each other, they suspected that the photo was just an edit. The next day, Yamada was caught chatting and inviting AI Fujisaki to play. He felt that Alter Ego could understand him compared to women in the real world who could only hurt him. Meanwhile, Ishimaru also wanted to claim the laptop so he could chat with Owada. Kirijiri, who saw this, finally forbade them from approaching the laptop. She ordered Alter Ego to scream if the two people approached him. The next night, they all gathered at the bathhouse again. Hagakure was told to call Meigi in his room. So that Monokuma wouldn't know that they were all gathered at the bathhouse, Hagakure gave Neigi a piece of paper containing a message. It turns out that Alter Ego is lost, and no one knows who took it. The next day, they gathered in the cafeteria, but only 4 people came: Neiji, Asahina, Kirijiri, and Ogami. So the 4 of them decided to look for the others, because they felt something was wrong. Neiji and Ogami found Celestia in the recreation room on the 3rd floor. She fainted because she was hit by Justice Hammer number 1. She said that the perpetrator was very agile. She also said that Yamada was kidnapped by that person and taken to the 2nd floor. Coincidentally, Kirijiri was there. Asahina, who joined later along with Meigi and Ogami, hurriedly went downstairs. Neiji invited Togami and Fukawa that they met to go to the library. They finally found Yamada, whose head was bleeding, hit by the same hammer. Yamada said that he was attacked using Justice Hammer number 2. He also added that the person who attacked him was a Justice robot. They couldn't believe it, but Celestia said that robots do exist. Celestia found a camera in the recreation room and takes a photo of the robot. They'd all finally split it up to look for the robot. Suddenly, Celestia screamed and the others came to her. Celestia said that the robot ran away to the physics lab. At the same time, Yamada, who was in the infirmary, shouted. Finally, they were divided into 2 groups, to go to the physics lab and to the infirmary room. Neiji, Celestia, and Asahina were shocked to see Yamada, who died because he was hit using Justice Hammer number 3. Neiji immediately rushed to the physics lab to call the others. But there he found Ishimaru dead. Fukawa was lying next to Ishimaru, but she only fainted because she saw blood. Ishimaru was hit using Justice Hammer number 4. When they returned to the infirmary, Yamada's body was no longer there. When Celestia and Asahina went to the bathroom, it looked panicked because they were afraid of being the next victims. But they remembered that based on Monokuma's regulations, perpetrators could only kill a maximum of 2 people at the same time. They were all confused about who the perpetrator of the murder this time was. They were curious about how to get rid of the corpse easily. They returned to the physics lab to wake up Fukawa. However, to their surprise, Ishimaru's body was also missing from there. They all suspected that the suspect was Hagakure, who was nowhere to be seen from the start. They all immediately looked for the 2 bodies around the school. Finally, they found the bodies of Yamada and Ishimaru in the art room on the 3rd floor. It turned out that Yamada was still alive, but he was dying. At the end of his life, Yamada said that the name of the perpetrator was Yasuhiro. They all thought that the perpetrator must be Hagakure, as Yasuhiro was his first name. Kirijiri then appeared out of nowhere because she wasn't there in the first place. She invited the others to go to the swimming pool. She found the Justice robot, which contained Hagakure. Neigi found something odd. The robot's suit was locked from the outside. Hagakure said that he was drugged by someone, and when he woke up, he was already in the robot costume. Kirijiri then came to analyze Ishimaru and Yamada's corpses. In Ishimaru's hand was a piece of paper. Meanwhile, Yamada's glasses didn't get blood on them at all. Then there were wheel marks at the crime scene. The murder weapon was a hammer taken from the art room and painted into the Justice Hammer. Yamada also held a piece of paper. The 3rd trial began. They all still suspected that the perpetrator was Hagakure because before Yamada died, he said that the perpetrator was Yasuhiro. Celestia then took out the evidence against Hagakure in his room. However, Neigi denied that the paper for the murder plan belonged to Hagakure. The writing on the paper was different from the writing on the paper Hagakure gave him yesterday. Meanwhile, Hagakure couldn't be able to move freely wearing a robot costume like that. However, Celestia said that there was a lot of evidence that pointed to Hagakure. She also accused the other perpetrator of being Kirijiri, who had disappeared from the start. Finally, Kirijiri conveyed the results of her investigation. Firstly, who could lift Yamada's huge body from the 2nd floor to the 3rd floor? Ogami might be able to do it, but they had always been together with the others. The last possibility was that Yamada went upstairs himself. So that was the reason why Yamada's glasses had no blood on them. Yamada cleaned his glasses so he could see the way up. When they saw Yamada covered in blood, it was just a lie. It was blood taken from the infirmary. The one who brought Ishimaru's body to the art room on the 3rd floor was Yamada using a trolley. The reason was that Kirigiri found pieces of paper belonging to Ishimaru in Yamada's underwear. The paper said that Yamada invited Ishimaru to meet at the physics lab. It turned out that Yamada was only being used by the real perpetrator. He tricked Yamada in helping him carry out his plan. Yamada acted as an accomplice when he invited Ishimaru, killed Ishimaru in the physics lab, and took his body to the art room. When he arrived at the art room, he was killed by the real perpetrator. The perpetrator had deceived Yamada to launch the action. The culprit was Celestia Ludenberg, also known as Yasuhiro Teiko. What Yamada said was true, Yasuhiro, which meant Celestia. Meiji managed to find out the actual perpetrator because Celestia once said that the perpetrator would kill the remaining students like he killed them both. Negi was shocked because they never told her if Ishimaru died. If she wasn't the culprit, she couldn't know if 2 people died. Celestia had stolen alter ego to deceive Yamada. She lied to Yamada if she was forced by Ishimaru to take alter ego. Yamada finally killed Ishimaru. While in the art room, Celestia killed Yamada using Justice Hammer. The reason Celestia did that was just because she wanted to go out and enjoy the money promised by Monokuma. Moreover, Celestia was a gambler. Finally, Celestia Ludenberg was executed. Kirigiri, who already trusted Meiji, then told him something. She showed storage space in a men's toilet. In the room, it was a storage place for information about all student names from all years. When Neji wanted to read the book there, he was attacked by someone. Neji fainted. When he woke up, all the books in the room were gone. He saw from behind the door Ogami and Monokuma, who were chatting together. It looked like Ogami no longer wanted to obey Monokuma's orders, but Monokuma threatened her because he took one of the Ogami families hostage. Students in the school were now 8 people left. The 4th floor could be accessed. The floor consisted of a chemistry lab, music room, and locked data processing room, and the principal's room was also locked. Neji had not discussed the problem of Ogami to anyone. He was still suspicious if Ogami was Monokuma's man, but he was afraid if he was wrong. Suddenly, Monokuma added a new regulation. All students must not forcibly damage the locked door. That meant there was something in the locked room. After that, all went to the bathhouse. It turned out that alter ego could already open the locked files on the laptop. There was a document that contained plans to make all students locked up there and live together. The plan was made because there was an incident a year ago named Hope's Peak Academy, biggest, most awful event. What made the plan was the head of the Hope's Peak Academy, a man in his 30s. Alter ego detected that the person was still around the school. They all suspected that that person was masterminding Monokuma. Alter ego again found a photo showing Yamada, Celestia, and Mizono, who were chatting in a class. Monokuma suddenly ordered all of them to gather. Monokuma told them that Sakura Ogami was his subordinate. Neji defended Ogami and said that if Ogami was forced to obey Monokuma's orders because he took Ogami's family hostage. Ogami was ordered to kill someone if for a long time, no one died. Asahina still defended her best friend even though she had to be cornered because of that. Kirigiri invited Negi to chat with Alter Ego. It turned out that Alter Ego wanted to be connected to the internet so he could help them all more. Incidentally, in the storage room in the men's toilet, there was an internet cable. Neji quietly brought Alter Ego there. After being connected, Negi let Alter Ego there so he could get more information from the outside world. In the evening, Asahina called Kirigiri and Negi to her room because she saw Ogami, who just sat quietly. Ogami did not answer when called, and also the door to the room was locked from the inside. Finally, Negi broke the glass on the door and opened the door that was held with a chair from inside. It turned out that Ogami was dead in his sitting position. It became a murder in a closed room. Asahina was surprised and immediately called the others. When all had gathered, Asahina immediately accused Fukawa, Hagakure, and Togami were killing Ogami. The 3 of them were the last people to meet Ogami. There were 6 students left who were still alive. There was a wound on Ogami's head. Her mouth was bleeding, and there were traces of yellow powder on her shoes. 2 bottles of Monokuma were broken, and in front of the magazine rack, there were bloodstains. There was a magazine upside down, and there was a bottle of protein shake lying on the floor. In the chemistry lab, there was a spill of yellow powder, and there were footprints on it. The 4th trial began. Several people were called by Ogami. The first was Togami. He got a letter to the recreation room, but he refused to come. Fukawa felt scared because she came first, so decided to hide in the locker. From inside the locker, she saw Havakura come to the recreation room and kill Ogami. He hit Ogami on the head with a Monokuma bottle. It turned out that at that time, Ogami was not dead because she only received one blow to the head. Fukawa, who saw a lot of blood, fainted. Ogami, who saw Fukawa faint, intended to take her to the infirmary. But instead, her genocider Seo personality emerged. Because she was shocked, she hit Ogami's head again with a bottle. Asahina then behaved strangely by continuing to ask for votes, even though the perpetrator itself was not clear. However, it turned out that it wasn't the two of them who killed Ogami because Ogami died in a sitting position, not in front of a magazine rack. There was no way she would die on the floor and then move to a chair to sit down. Togami also issued his theory. He found a poison bottle from the chemistry lab. In the chemistry lab, there were 3 shelves, namely the nutrition, reagent, and poison shelves. Strangely, the poison bottle appeared on the nutrition shelf. Togami immediately drank the poison bottle in front of the others. Togami was sure that the contents of the bottle had been exchanged for protein powder beforehand. This was known because there was a broken nutrition bottle at the crime scene. Suddenly, Asahina cried and admitted that she was the one who had exchanged the contents of the bottle. She was also the one who gave the bottle to Ogami. She also said that the footprints in the chemistry lab were hers. But Neji felt something was odd. When Neji asked why the room was locked from the inside, Asahina couldn't answer. It turned out the truth of this case was not as Togami said. What was at the crime scene was a poison bottle. Asahina came and swapped the poison bottle for a protein shake bottle. The one who took the poison was Ogami herself. It could be seen from the yellow powder on Ogami's shoes. In conclusion, Ogami committed suicide. After she was beaten by Hagakure and Fukawa, Asahina came. But Ogami asked her to bring a protein bottle from the chemistry lab. Ogami deliberately did that so that no one could stop her. She locked the door from inside. Asahina realized that Ogami wanted to commit suicide because she saw a poison spill in the chemistry lab. She went straight back there, but she was too late. Ogami had committed suicide. Ogami did this as a form of responsibility to her other friends because she had become Monokuma's subordinate. The reason Asahina lied was so that they could all be punished for guessing the voting wrong. She showed the will that Ogami made for her. But it was a fake will written by Monokuma, and he had Ogami's real letter. In Ogami's original letter, she said that her real purpose in committing suicide was not because of guilt, but because she wanted to stop the feud between them all. From that moment, they all realized and wanted to work together to uncover the mastermind behind all this. The one who received the punishment was Alter Ego, whose existence Monokuma already knew. At the end of the original letter, Ogami said that the original mastermind had done something to each of their bodies. The 5th floor was now open. There was a garden that had giant flowers, 5 chickens, and a tool storage shed. On the 5th floor, there was a classroom that was destroyed and filled with blood. They were curious and wondered who Kirigiri really was. But Kirigiri said that she didn't remember. However, because Togami was suspicious and didn't trust Kirigiri, he confiscated her room key. On the 5th floor, Fukawa found a knife. They decided to give it to Neji so he could keep it. It didn't take long for Monokuma to get angry and tell them to get together. He had lost something he called a treasure. Monokuma suspected that it was stolen by one of them. Kirigiri then invited Neji to chat at the bathhouse. Kirigiri admitted that she had stolen Monokuma's treasure, namely a key that could open all the rooms in the school. She took the key to the principal's office, which she managed to open right before Ogami committed suicide. Kirigiri wanted to go in there again. Therefore, she asked for help from Neji to distract Monokuma. In the principal's room, Kirigiri could get information about Ikusaba Mukuro. She suspected that Ikusaba was the mastermind behind all this. Neji then tried to distract Monokuma. Meanwhile, Kirigiri secretly entered the principal's room using the key. That night, when Neji was sleeping, he suddenly woke up because a masked person came into his room and wanted to kill him. When he closed his eyes, Kirigiri appeared and helped Neji. The next morning, Neji saw that all the knives in the drawer were all gone. When Neji went to the gym, he saw the others gathered there, fiddling with Monokuma dolls. It turned out to be a broken Monokuma doll. Togami was the first to find it just a few hours ago. When it was successfully opened, there was a bomb inside. Luckily, Togami had turned off the bomb. Then they went to the principal's office. Because it was locked, Togami told Fukawa to take an axe in the garden. However, it wasn't long before Fukawa returned and transformed into genocider Seo. She found a body in the garden and didn't know whose body it was. The corpse was wearing a white dress and mask. They initially thought it was Kirigiri. Genocider Seo, without thinking, immediately ran towards the corpse and removed her mask. Unexpectedly, the body exploded, making the corpse's face unrecognizable. They were even more confused about whose corpse it was. Neji immediately remembered Kirigiri's words that it might be the 16th student at that school. It also answered why there were 16 standing places in the courtroom. From the corpse, they got the key to the data processing room. Once open, the room contained many CCTV screens that monitored every corner of the school. Suddenly, Monokuma appeared and said that they were all being broadcast live. Since the beginning, they were at that school. So their life, while there was broadcasted as a kind of reality show. They were confused about what actually happened. Because a body was found, Monokuma prepared them all for trial. It wasn't long before Kirigiri appeared, and they were all in the elevator heading to the courtroom. Meiji was sure that the corpse was the 16th student, Akusaba Mukuro. During the trial, Togami immediately accused Kirigiri of being the perpetrator. Kirigiri had no alibi from the night before the incident until the body was found. According to Togami, the blood on the corpse was not her blood, but blood from chickens in the garden. It turned out there was one less chicken there. Kirigiri continued to deny that she wasn't the culprit. Neji knew that Kirigiri could enter any room, but Negi still believed in Kirigiri. Neji felt that this trial was strange, so he asked Monokuma something. He was confused as to why the identity of the corpse was not stated clearly in their pocketbook. Everything felt like it was being covered up. Negi was shocked when Kirigiri accused him of being the perpetrator of the murder. Kirigiri said Negi was the person who had put the key to the locker containing the murder weapon in Kirigiri's room. Kirigiri said that she couldn't go into her own room. In fact, she could have entered her room because she had keys to all the rooms. Voting began. Everyone there voted for Negi. Even though he wasn't the perpetrator, he was still punished. It turned out that before he could die, he was saved by Alter Ego, who suddenly appeared and had hijacked Monokuma's system. Neji's body fell without having to be hit by the iron. Neji rested there until he waited for a miracle to come. The next day, Kirigiri was also there. She apologized to Negi because she had actually planned everything to reveal the real mastermind. They both went upstairs. Kirigiri apparently already remembered her nickname, the detective. It turned out that the real principal of Hope's Peak Academy was her own father, Jin Kirigiri. The two of them immediately met Monokuma and asked for the trial to be repeated. Monokuma agreed. He said that if they managed to uncover the mystery of this school, they would win. Monokuma confirmed that there were indeed 16 students there. He said that the trial would be the last. Kirigiri invited Negi to go to the principal's room or her father's room. They found a file with a password. Kirigiri entered her first name and she succeeded. A secret room opened. In the room, they found a gift box containing the principal's bones. Alter Ego once said that the principal was still at this school, even though it turned out to be in that condition. Neji took the principal's pocketbook and a memory card from the box. When they looked at the contents of the memory card, it contained videos of student interviews. Monokuma suddenly came and destroyed the memory. Kirigiri asked Negi to go first because she wanted to be with her father for a while. When Neji left, Togami came in and joined in the investigation. He discovered the identity of the 16th student, Akusaba Mukuro, the soldier. Neji then went to the locker room on the second floor. He used the principal's pocketbook and managed to open all the lockers there. It turned out that the contents of the locker there were the personal belongings. He found Hagakure and Kirigiri's study notebooks. Negi was confused as to why all of them were there even though they had just arrived. Neji entered the morgue. He found Fukawa, who turned into genocider Seo. After examination, Akusaba Mukuro's body had many stab wounds. It didn't match Monokuma's description. Monokuma then came and gave a photo to all of them. The last trial to uncover the mystery of the school began. They debated on the photo that Monokuma had given them. Each student got different photos. Each photo they held, they were the only ones not in the photo. They all accused each other. Monokuma said that all photos were real. But they all never remembered being in the photo. Finally, they realized that all this time they had amnesia. The memories from the first time they were there until they were trapped there had been erased by the mastermind behind it all. This had all been proven by the interview videos on the memory card and all the personal items in the locker. Monokuma said they were right. Neji already suspected that the person who killed Akusaba Mukuro was not Kirigiri, but the real mastermind. The real mastermind's name was the real Enoshima Junko. Not long after, Junko appeared. It turned out that Enoshima Junko and Akusaba Mukuro were twins. The person who was with them from the moment they met was Mukuro, who deliberately disguised herself as Enoshima Junko. The two of them worked together, but Junko instead killed Mukuro. Therefore, Mukuro's corpse had many stab wounds. Neji could guess that the mastermind was Junko because Monokuma continued to hide Junko's real identity. Neji remembered that when the interview video came to Junko's part, Monokuma destroyed the memory card. These two sisters got the nickname the Despair Sisters. The reason she killed Mukuro was so that her plan would work perfectly. She was also actually fed up with her sister. Junko showed the outside world which was in chaos, but they all didn't remember the beginning of the incident. Neji asked Fukawa, to transform into genocider CO because the memories of these two personalities were separate. She said there was an incident called the worst and biggest human despair in history. It was a social disaster, the despair that spread throughout the world, which started from this academy. It made the world chaotic and devastated. They had actually been there for 2 years and not a few weeks. But they all didn't remember because their memories had been erased. A year ago, this incident occurred and almost all the students at Hope's Peak Academy died and only they were left. Enoshima Junko wanted to spread that despair to people out there by broadcasting the remaining students killing each other. A year ago, when the disaster occurred, the original principal made the school a place of refuge for students. But in the end, only 16 of them survived. The Despair Sisters had planned all of that. They didn't want people out there to have hope. They wanted everyone out there to fall into the abyss of despair. Voting to determine who was guilty began. Of course, they all chose Junko. But suddenly Junko said that if they all chose her, then they would leave that place, which had lots of food, air, and a clean place to live. The equipment in the physics lab filtered the air there to make it clean. If they chose someone else, then they could live there safely and comfortably without having to experience harsh life in the outside world. They all hesitated. But Negi finally said that they should have the hope of living freely and not being confined to that place. When they heard Negi's words, they all immediately became enthusiastic and believed that they still had hope. The 6 of them wanted to get out of that place, so they chose Junko. Based on that vote, Junko executed herself. The punishment was a combination of all the punishments that had occurred before. They finally got a master key that could get them all out of that cursed school. Danganronpa 3 would be divided into several parts, namely the Despair Arc, which told the story of the first moment of despair, the Future Arc, which occurred several years after the departure of Makoto Megi and his friends, and the Hope Arc, which would be the conclusion of all Danganronpa stories. This story began from the Future Arc. In Season 1, the Class 78th Hope's Peak Academy students were forced to kill each other. The mastermind behind all these incidents was Enoshima Junko. They finally succeeded in defeating Junko and leaving the school. After they managed to get out, they joined an organization, the Future Foundation. This organization aimed to combat the remnants of despair. It could also be interpreted as a war against people who were influenced by the ideology brought by Enoshima Junko. Future Foundation members were alumni of Hope's Peak Academy. They would hold a trial at their headquarters. All the branch heads of the Future Foundation gathered. Their agenda was to discuss the betrayal committed by Makoto Megi. He was accused of betrayal because he had saved the remnants of despair. These leaders were Kazuo Tengen, former director of Hope's Peak Academy. He also served as chairman of the Future Foundation. Great Gozu was a man wearing a bold mask who was the Branch Office 12 director. He was a former student of Hope's Peak Academy and the wrestler. Kizakura Koichi was the Branch Office 3 director. He was responsible for scouting of members and branch heads and distribution of personnel. Geko Vihara Miea, a girl who sat in a wheelchair, was the Branch Office 7 director. She was a former student of Hope's Peak Academy, a therapist. Kimura Siko, the girl who always wore a mask, was the Branch Office 4 director. She was a former student of Hope's Peak Academy, the pharmacist. Sakakura Juzo, who was the Branch Office 6 director, as well as a former student of Hope's Peak Academy, the boxer. Bande Gesaku, the Branch Office 11 director, was a former student of Hope's Peak Academy, the farmer. Ando Riruka, the Branch Office 8 director, a former student of Hope's Peak Academy, the confectioner. Ezeoe Sanosuke, who was the Branch Office 9 director, a former student of Hope's Peak Academy, the blacksmith. Yukazo Chiza was the Branch Office 5 director, a former student of Hope's Peak Academy and the housekeeper. She was also a former teacher. Munikata Kyosuke also came. He was the vice chairman of the Future Foundation, as well as a former student of Hope's Peak Academy and the student council president. Discussions at this meeting began. They discussed Negi's reasons for saving desperate people. They were all former students of Hope's Peak Academy's Class 77th. They had all fallen into Enoshima Junko's ideology of despair. They then spread that understanding throughout the world. Not long after, Neji Makoto, a member of Branch Office 14, entered along with Aoi Asahina, a member of Branch Office 13, and Kyoko Kirigiri, Branch Office 14 director. Kyosuke immediately asked Negi to be handcuffed immediately. Sakakura handcuffed Negi and punched him in the stomach, injuring Neji. The meeting was postponed. Neji was then taken to another room to be treated by Yukazome. Yukazome asked Negi why he saved her students. Neji explained that he didn't know what the reason was. But he believed that before falling into the abyss of despair, they were once people who had hope. Kirigiri, who had just come out of the toilet, met Midori Ryota, Branch Office 10 director, a former Hope's Peak Academy student, the animator who arrived late. Suddenly, they felt an earthquake. Asahina, who was in the toilet, accidentally discovered the bodies of several security officers. Hagakure Yasuhiro, who was a member of Branch Office 10, was also there, but he was asked to wait outside. Not long after, there was an attack on the base and the entrance was blocked because it was covered in rubble. The people in the building gathered again in the meeting room. It turned out that all the exits had been blocked by rubble and could not be accessed. Asahina came to the meeting room and reported that all the security officers were dead. They also couldn't contact headquarters because there was no telephone network. Suddenly, Gaz appeared in the meeting room and made everyone there faint. When they all woke up, their hands were fitted with bracelets that had timers on them. A familiar voice appeared from the bracelets. It was Monokuma's voice. Negi was very surprised because Monokuma appeared again. He was confused because Inoshima Junko was dead. Monokuma said that the killing would start again. They were all shocked because they saw drops from above. When everyone looked up, to their surprise, Yukazome was already dead, hanging. Monokuma said with Yukazome's death, the killing game began. Monokuma laid down some rules. The first rule was the time limit. If the time on the bracelet ran out, then everyone would be injected with an anesthetic through the bracelet. The second rule was the attacker. When everyone fell asleep due to the anesthesia, there would be one person who would wake up. He or she would be the attacker. This person had to kill one person in each sleep. Monokuma said that this person was the traitor. If they all succeeded in killing this traitor, then the game was over. The third rule was forbidden action. Each of them would have one action that was prohibited from doing. The action was written on their bracelets. If the forbidden action was carried out, the person would immediately die because the bracelet would inject a lethal dose of poison. If they were forced to remove the bracelet would inject them to death. Monokuma also said that this time the game would be broadcast live throughout the world. Gekko Vihara tried to fight Monokuma. Gekko Vihara was a very shy girl and always talked through a computer screen. But suddenly, Monokuma hacked Gekko Vihara's system. She was good at computers, couldn't do anything. They all finally split up and looked for the situation in every corner of the building. It turned out to be true, there was no way out that they could use. Sakakura immediately accused Negi of being the attacker. Midori tried to calm Sakakura. However, Midori was beaten. Bandai suddenly grabbed Sakakura's shoulder. He appeared to be dying as his forbidden action on his bracelet was taking effect. His bracelet said that he should not see violence. Bandai died and became the second victim. Kyosu gave the idea of voting on who the real traitor was. As expected, Negi got the most votes. Kyosu took out his katana and wanted to kill Negi. Luckily, Gozu stopped him. Karajuri tried to divert attention by emitting smoke so Meiji and Asahina could escape. Meiji couldn't run because his forbidden action was running in the hallway. Asahina decided to carry Negi. Even though they were running fast, they still met Kyosuke again. Kyosuke was seen fighting with Gozu. Kyosuke said he would eradicate all remnants of despair at all costs, even if he had to kill everyone. Luckily, Gozu managed to blow up the place. Neji and the others managed to escape from Kyosuke. Gekko Vihara also joined Negi's group. Neji, Asahina, Gozu, and Gekko Vihara escaped to a safe room. Soon, the time on their bracelets would run out. The reason Gozu saved Negi was because he believed in him. Gozu used to watch Negi, who managed to beat Junko. He believed that Negi was the hope they and the world needed. The time on the bracelet ran out and they all fell asleep. Monokuma greeted via the monitor screen that was broadcast to all rooms. He asked the attacker to look for his victim. When Negi woke up, he saw Gozu dead entangled in cables on the ceiling. Negi felt so sad. They suspected that the attacker managed to enter the room. Meanwhile, Aizaoi and Ruruka managed to survive this first round. They were sitting in a room where Aizaoi laid his head on Ruruka's lap. When Ruruka wanted to feed Aizaoi food, he refused. In another room, there were Kirijiri, Kidare, and Chief Tengen, who also survived. In another room, Kyosuke and Sakakura also managed to survive. Only one person died this time. Negi had an idea to control his signature move, which was lecturing. He wanted to go to the radio room and broadcast his lecture so that this game would not continue. They haven't worked together to solve all this. As they walked together, Neji realized that Gekko Vihara was moving her wheelchair strangely. When they turned right, she turned left first before turning right. It turned out that her prohibited action was not to turn right. To maintain trust, Asahina and Negi showed their respective forbidden actions to her. Asahina's forbidden action was that she must not receive punches and kicks. Hearing someone coming, Asahina and Gekko Vihara tried to divert attention. Negi went to the radio room alone. Outside the building, there was Hagakure, who was calling his friends. He was trapped outside and couldn't get in. Suddenly, a helicopter came shooting at him. Luckily, Hagakure survived. Neji arrived at the radio room and immediately started his lecture. He invited everyone to talk with a cool head. He asked not to take part in this cursed game. He also explained his reasons for saving the remnants of despair. He carried out a rehabilitation program for them called the New World Program, where their memories would be reset before they met Enoshima Junko. So that everyone would be sure that he was serious, he told them about his forbidden action. Kyosuke, who heard this, immediately went to Negi to the radio room. Sakakura said that he would take care of Negi's friends. On the other hand, Ruruka and Izioe met Siko. It seemed that the three of them were having a bit of an argument. Siko, the pharmacist who hated Ruruka and Izioe, immediately took out a medicine she made that could increase her physique many times over. The three of them were chasing each other. Elsewhere, Sakakura met Kirijiri's group, Chief Tengen and Kidare. Chief Tengen, even though he was old, was able to face Sakakura. He took out a crossbow from under his clothes. Even though Sakakura was a former boxer, for some reason he didn't put his fists out this time. Chief Tengen managed to defeat Sakakura. Chief Tengen tied up Sakakura to the wall. Asahina and Gekabahara met Kirijiri's group. Suddenly, there was an announcement from the speaker saying that Kyosuke had succeeded in capturing Negi. He said he would immediately kill Negi. Kirijiri believed it was just a decoy. However, Chief Tengen, Asahina, and Gekabahara volunteered to go to the radio room to negotiate. Kyosuke told Negi that he actually knew that the attacker was not Negi. Negi was just bait. He wanted to lure the real attacker to come there. Even if Negi was killed now, the attacker could stop the game at any time, and the mastermind behind all this would never be revealed. Suddenly, Chief Tengen and his group arrived. There was a duel between Chief Tengen and Kyosuke. Asahina and Gekabahara immediately took Negi away from there. Kirijiri, who was a former detective together with Midare, went to the meeting room to investigate something. There they met Kizakura. Meanwhile, Sakakura managed to untie his hands. He saw Neji and the others running away. He decided to chase them. On the other hand, Ruruka and Izioe were still being chased by Siko. Behind the door, Siko told her rampage was because Ruruka and Izioe caused her to be expelled from Kibugamin College. However, Ruruka and Izioe answered that they were also expelled due to Siko's actions. In the middle of the fight, Chief Tengen blocked Kyosuke's katana attack using his bare hands. He had serious injuries to his hands. However, because Kyosuke's sword got stuck, Chief Tengen threw himself down so that Kyosuke would also fall with him. Meanwhile, Gekabahara realized that someone was following them. She wanted to stop Sakakura by using combat mode. However, because Gekabahara took a long time to pronounce her signature move, Sakakura beat Gekabahara until she fell from her wheelchair. It was only discovered that Gekabahara was just a robot controlled by someone from outside. Meanwhile, a green-haired girl was confused as to why her robot couldn't move. Reluctantly, she had to reboot the system. Meanwhile, Chief Tengen fell right on the iron towering up from the ruins of the building. He was dying. Kyosuke instead fell to a safe place and he was fine. The story went back to the Despair arc several years ago, which told the origin of all this tragedy. Told at Hope's Peak Academy 2 months after the acceptance of the class 77th, a new teacher entered the academy. Her name was Yukizome Chiza. The principal made Yukizome Sensei the deputy homeroom teacher of Class 1B. The principal of the school was Kirijiri's father, Jin Kirijiri. The homeroom teacher of Class 1B was Kizakura Koichi. He also doubled as a talent scout. That day, there were only a few people in class. Hope's Peak Academy was a unique school that brought together children who were experts in their respective fields. They were given special treatment, such as the freedom to determine when they wanted to enter or not. As long as they were at school, their talents must always be honed. When they took the practical exam, they all had to pass. Each student in 1B class 77th was introduced. Kuzuri Fuyuhiko, the Yakuza gangster, Sayonji Hyoko, the dancer, Kozumi Mahiru, the photographer, Sonia Nevermind, the princess, and Sumiki Maiken, the nurse. Yukizome Sensei wanted all the children to attend today, so she invited all the students there to forcefully pick up their other friends. First of all, they picked up Nidai Nekamaru, the team manager. Then there was Hanamura Tarutaru, the cook. After that, there was Owaria Kane, the gymnast, and Sota Kazuichi, the mechanic. There was also Tanaka Gundam, the breeder, Miyota Ibuki, the musician, Pekoyama Piko, the swordswoman, and Najiro Kameda, the lucky student. Apart from that, there was Midare Ryota, the animator. Lastly, there was Chiaki Nanami, the gamer. Chiaki made a new friend, a male student named Hinata Hajime, who didn't have a nickname because he came from Kibugamin College's reserve major. Hope's Peak Academy also had a department for ordinary children who didn't have any talents. The difference was that they had to go to this school at a fairly expensive cost. Later, Hajime would have an important role in the Danganronpa universe. In the afternoon after class, Yukizome Sensei reported to Kyosuke Munakata, the council president, about her progress today. Yukizome Sensei was sent by Kyosuke to spy on Hope's Peak Academy. Kyosuke was currently abroad to create an overseas branch of Hope's Peak Academy. Later, he would become chairman of the Future Foundation like in the Future arc at the beginning of this anime. This overseas branch was the setting for the murders at the Future Foundation in the Future arc. 2 weeks after the introduction of the Class 77th, Yukazomi Sensei wanted to elect a class president. She was confused about who was suitable to lead these talented children. When she went to class, she saw 2 of her students fighting, which were Naidai and Akane. Chiaki then left the classroom because she didn't want to get involved in anything. She said to herself that no one wanted to be friends with her. However, Yukazomi Sensei encouraged her that even from games, Chiaki could definitely make friends. During break time, Yukazomi Sensei gave another report to Kyosuke. She said that there were allegations that funds from the reserve department, Kipugumi College, were used for something by school officials. To find more information, Yukazomi Sensei came to Hajime, who happened to be lying on a park bench. Hajime considered himself inferior because he entered the reserve major. Yukazomi Sensei encouraged him not to be discouraged. Not long after that, Yukazomi Sensei left. A few moments later, Kazuo Tengen, the former principal, arrived. He talked about a project with Hajime. He said that if the project was not in line with Hajime's heart, then it would be best to just reject it. This project would be explained later in this anime. Hajime looked pensive and found it hard to refuse. His parents couldn't afford to pay his school fees anymore, which were getting more and more expensive. However, if Hajime took part in this project, then he wouldn't have to pay school fees anymore. Yukazomi Sensei returned to class and saw all the students getting along and playing games. Chiaki, who helped them all. That way, Chiaki made friends through the game just like Yukazomi Sensei told her. It brought the whole students in class became closer. The next day, because Yukazomi Sensei saw Chiaki's ability to unite the whole class, she was appointed as class president of 1B Class 77th. All the students there agreed. Returning to the Future arc, Ruruka, Azuyue, and Siko were still involved in a chase. It was shown that when Siko was little, she had no friends because she was considered strange by the other children. They saw that Siko often carried strange medicine and always wore a mask. On her way to school, Siko saw a dying dog. She gave the dog her homemade medicine. The dog was able to recover. Azuyue and Ruruka saw what Siko did to the dog. They were amazed by Siko's abilities. The 3 of them eventually became friends. Every day, they always played together. Ruruka always offered sweets to Siko, but Siko refused all the time because she couldn't eat sugar. In exchange, Siko would do anything for Ruruka. But over time, Ruruka ended up taking advantage of Siko's kindness. She asked for a lot of medicine, such as cold medicine, memory-enhancing medicine, and even stamina-increasing medicine. As time went on, Ruruka got worse. It turned out that Ruruka did this because she was hurt because Siko never wanted to eat the sweets she made. In the present Future arc, Ruruka almost got caught by Siko. Ruruka accidentally turned on the light. Automatically, Siko's shadow was clearly visible. She was hanging on the edge of the glass. When Ruruka accidentally steps on Siko's shadow on the floor, Siko avoided it. Finally, Ruruka and Azuyue used Siko's forbidden actions so that her shadow could not be stepped on by others. Meanwhile, Chief Tengen and Kyosuke were seen chatting. From that chat, Kyosuke became convinced that Chief Tengen was the real attacker. However, Chief Tengen denied it and revealed the real identity of the attacker. Kyosuke looked very surprised to hear that name. So that Kyosuke would believe him, Chief Tengen showed his forbidden actions, which was not answering questions with lies. Seeing this, Kyosuke immediately slashed Chief Tengen's body. Chief Tengen also pierced Kyosuke's right eye with his weapon. In the end, the duel was won by Kyosuke. Chief Tengen died on the spot. On the other hand, Azuyue left Ruruka alone because he felt that Ruruka would be fine because they both already knew about Siko's forbidden actions. He went into another room to look for tools that could be used for weapons. In this room, Azuyue accidentally found a secret exit with a picture of Monokuma's face on it. Ruruka told Siko that she would forgive Siko if she wanted to eat the sweets. However, Siko still refused because since she was little, she couldn't eat sweet foods. It was a side effect of the medication she had been taking since childhood. Seeing Ruruka always forcing her, Siko immediately increased the dose of medicine many times over. Her body became stronger. Siko immediately jumped up and turned off all the lights there so that there were no more shadows. Ruruka ran away and Siko chased her. On the way, Siko met Sakakura. Siko immediately beat Sakakura. Gecko Vihara came and immediately shot Siko. Siko fainted. A few minutes later, Siko woke up and went to find a safe place from the attacker in this round of killings. Time ran out and everyone fell asleep. Then the past of Yukazomi, Kyosuke, and Sakakura was shown. After graduating from high school, they planned to improve the Hope's Peak Academy system, which they considered had gone astray. They heard that the school officials had a hidden conspiracy. Therefore, Kyosuke would build a branch of Hope's Peak Academy overseas. Meanwhile, Sakakura and Yukazome Sensei would infiltrate Hope's Peak Academy in Japan. When they all woke up, they were confused to see that there were 2 victims in one murder. The victims were Siko and Aizioi. In fact, according to the rules given by Monokuma, an attacker could only kill 1 person. Neji, Asahina, and Gekobahara tried to access the CCTV so they could see everyone's position. They saw the dead Chief Tengen being killed by Kyosuke. Seeing this, Neji sat down and felt guilty. However, Gekobahara, or the person behind Gekobahara, encouraged him. Neji felt optimistic again and tried to find a way out of all this. They saw that next to Chief Tengen's corpse, there was a writing saying that he entrusted the hope of the world to you. Gekobahara gave the idea of asking for outside help. Since all access was turned off by Monokuma, Gekobahara planned to hack the system so she could access the network. Then they went to the radio room. Finally, they managed to contact the nearest Future Foundation headquarters. The call was connected to Togami Byakuya, branch office 4 director, also Neji's former schoolmate. Neji explained the situation and Togami tried to understand the situation. Togami said that he would send help to Neji. Togami said that there were no broadcasts about the killing game at all. So apparently, Monokuma lied to them. Togami also said that Kyosuke secretly sent troops to Jabberwock Island to destroy the remnants of Despair. On that island, Neji rescued all his seniors from Class 77th to take part in the New World program. The call was turned off. Togami deliberately didn't tell them that the Gekobahara they were with was fake. The real Gekobahara died a few days ago. Togami was afraid that Neji would be harmed by the fake Gekobahara. Togami immediately ordered Neji's younger sisters, Neji Komaru and Tuko Fukawa, to take part. Fukawa was actually not allowed to join the Future Foundation because she had a split personality with a murderer, genocider Seo. So the 2 of them were given the task of catching the mastermind behind it all. Then the person behind the fake Gekobahara, or suspected of being behind the murder at the Future Foundation, was introduced. She was Tawa Monaka. Tawa Monaka was a former classmate of Megi's younger sister. Monaka was the person who made Monokuma dolls, including the Monokuma used by Inoshima Junko in Season 1. Monaka claimed to be Junko's successor. Currently, she was in Tawa City. Coincidentally, Fukawa and Komaru were in that city too. There were also several other children. They are David Masaru, Atsuji Kotoko, and Kimura Jutaro. All of them are former classmates of Monaka and Komaru at Hope's Peak Elementary School. Komaru and Fukawa were seen coming to the Monaka headquarters building. Even though many Monokuma troops blocked them, they managed to defeat them all. They entered the building and were greeted by Monaka. Monaka took out lots of gun and robots to beat Komaru and Fukawa, but before the fight could start, Monaka suddenly gave up. Monaka said she was bored because no matter what, the Hope would win. They then came to Monaka, who was in a van. Monaka explained that she was not the mastermind. She had nothing to do with the Future Foundation's killing game. She just wanted to observe Neji closely. However, she indeed killed the real Gekobahara. She no longer wanted to become hopeless because she didn't want to be like Najido Komeda. Najigo was one of the 1B Class 77th students who fell into despair. Monaka then said goodbye to them and sent her greetings to Neji. The van finally flew. Monaka said she wanted to isolate herself. Komaru then told Neji that the Gekobahara he had with him was a fake. Komaru said before Monaka flew off, she said that Neji's classmates would die because of Neji's mistake. Back in the Despair arc, Kajin was seen looking for information about his school. He was considering the offer the school gave him. He really wanted to enter the majors, but he had no talent at all. He was given 1 week to make the decision the school gave him. Because Hajime kept looking towards the main building, his classmate noticed and asked why Hajime kept looking in the same direction. This girl's name was Natsumi Kuzuryu. Natsumi was Fuyuhiko's younger sister, a student from Class 77B, the Yakuza gangster. Natsumi just started school and didn't make any friends because of her snooty appearance. Natsumi said that she would do anything to get into the majors. She intended to get rid of one of the girls in the main department who was in the same class as her older brother. One of the female students named Seto suddenly came and got angry at Natsumi because she heard that Natsumi was going to bother her friend who was in the main department. It turned out that what Seto meant was Koizumi, the photographer. 3 of them used to come from the same middle school and even the same photography club. However, because Koizumi had better talent than Natsumi and Seto, she was the one who entered the main department. Elsewhere, Fuyuhiko was chatting with Pikoyama. Previously, Pikoyama was Fuyuhiko's subordinate, when Pikoyama was a contract killer. The 2 of them were talking about Natsumi, who was in the reserve department. In the park, Chiaki and Hajime were playing games together during break time. Hajime was still thinking about the offer from school yesterday. Because Hajime lost a game to Chiaki, he became pessimistic about himself having no talent. However, Chiaki said that life was not all about talent. Talent would not guarantee that life would be enjoyable. Hearing that, Hajime felt better. He said even though he had no talent, there was still hope. Hajime then returned to his class. At the end of the hall, he saw Sato and Natsume arguing. Sato was annoyed because Natsume was still calling Koizumi names. When Sato was about to hit Natsume, Hajime stopped Sato. Before Natsume left, she said that she would kill Sato. Hajime then met Natsume. Natsume cried because she really wanted to enter the majors together with Fuyuhiko. She didn't want to be far from him and she wanted to stay by his side. The next day in Hajime's class, there were many police and police lines. It turned out that Natsume was murdered. Fuyuhiko saw her sister's corpse, and he was mad. Hajime, who was sitting pensive in the garden, accidentally saw Sato together with Koizumi. Koizumi asked Sato to tell the truth about this murder case. Sato said she wasn't the one who killed Natsume and Koizumi believed her. When Koizumi left, Hajime came to Sato. Hajime asked her about the actual incident, but Sato became hysterical and screamed and then just walked away. The next day, Sato disappeared and did not come to school again. A week later, Sato was found dead. Because Hajime felt something was wrong, he then went to the main department building, but he was stopped by Sakakura. Sakakura was the head of security at the school. Hajime kept asking Sakakura. However, Sakakura answered that the children in the reserve department were not important. If they died, then no one would care. Sakakura then beat Hajime because he kept fighting. Luckily, Yukizome-sensei arrived and stopped Sakakura. Hajime immediately left. Sakakura reminded Yukizome not to forget their main goal of infiltrating the school. Hajime then met Chiaki at the park. When Chiaki wanted to invite Hajime to play, he refused and said he was on business. But actually, Hajime had made up his mind after he heard Sakakura's words earlier that people who had no talent were not important. He finally accepted the offer from the school. He was willing to be a guinea pig, that was, to be the first person with artificial talent. A few days later, the main department would hold a practical exam. In the main department, there was no written exam, but they were required to pass the practical exam if they did not want to be expelled from the school. After class, Najito came to Yukizome-sensei's room. He asked that the practical exams in class be postponed because some children were not ready. However, Yukizome-sensei could not grant Najito's request. Because it could not be postponed, Najito would use his own method. During break time, Chiaki always went to the park to play games with Hajime. But since that day, Hajime was never seen again. Najito then asked Teruteru for information about someone good at making medicine. He told them that the person's name was Kimura Siko, their own senior. Najito then asked for a laxative to be made to Siko. Najito reasoned that recently he had difficulty defecating. Siko made it for him and told him to take the medicine in the storage room. She said the medicine was in the corner, top right row. At the same time, Ruruka and Izoi arrived. Ruruka asked to make stamina-enhancing medicine. Siko actually had a drug similar to that. However, the drug had not been tested further. Ruruka was impatient and wanted to ask for the medicine directly. Siko felt annoyed because Ruruka only came when she needed her. Finally, Siko told Ruruka to get the medicine herself from the storage room. Nagio, who was in the storage room, actually found two drugs labeled Reanimator and Reactivator. He was confused about which medicine he wanted, but because he believed in his luck, he took the green medicine that said Reanimator. Najito then met Izoi and Ruruka. Najito said that he only took orders for medicine. After that, Najito left them. Ruruka managed to get the medicine she wanted and she and Izoi left. It turned out that the plan prepared by Najito was very extreme. He wanted to thwart the practical exam by planting a bomb at his school. The day of the practical exam arrived. Siko, who was in a hurry, accidentally bumped into Nagito. When they wanted to leave, they didn't realize that their bags had been swapped. The practical exam began. The one who started first was Ruruka. Because she was skilled at making sweets, she made special sweets for the judges. Ruruka said that after eating the sweets, they would definitely gain stamina many times over. After the first bite, the judges seemed to like it. Their faces looked bright and happy. But a few seconds later, the judges immediately felt sick. It turned out that the medicine she was using was switched with Najito's medicine, which was a laxative. Moreover, Ruruka used one bottle of the medicine. Seeing this, Siko tried to treat the judges, but when she opened her bag, she found a bomb trigger. People who saw this immediately panicked. Ruruka, who felt that Siko was trapping her, immediately became angry with Siko. Ruruka accused Siko of deliberately making her fail. Ruruka said in anger that Siko was just a tool for her and not her friend. Hearing this, Siko scolded her back and an argument broke out. Najito then came and brought drinks for the examiners. He still didn't realize that the medicine had been mixed up. He planned to make them all constipated so that the exam would be postponed. However, if his plan didn't work, he would threaten to use a bomb. When he reached the door, a dog nudged his leg. The drink spilled and the dog drank it. The dog instead became a giant and immediately charged into the exam building. Because everyone was panicking when they saw the giant dog, the bomb trigger was accidentally pressed, and the school building exploded. Fortunately, there were no casualties in the explosion this time. Yukazome-sensei came and saw Najigo in front of the destroyed building. Najigo was then interrogated by Yukazome-sensei. Najigo said that talent was everything. Therefore, he didn't want his friends to fail this exam. So that his friends' preparations could be completed, he wanted to postpone the exam. Najigo didn't care about himself, who he considered trash and only relied on luck. However, Yukazome-sensei emphasized that Najido was not trash. Finally, the principal took firm action by expelling Izoi, Ruruka, and Siko. Nagido, who was suspected of being the mastermind behind all this, was also suspended. Class 1B 77th homeroom teacher was not allowed to teach yet. Meanwhile, Yukazome-sensei would be moved to the reserve department. Yukazome-sensei then went to class to say goodbye. She told all their students that Najido was innocent. He actually really cared about his friends. Therefore, he was willing to make sacrifices to do all this even though the method was wrong. Meanwhile, in the future arc, Hagakure, who was outside the building, ran fast from being shot by a helicopter controlled by Monokuma. Luckily, he survived because Togami came to save him. Inside the building, Nagi, who saw the fake Gekugahara, entered combat mode and asked Asahina to go out of the room. On the way, they met Kyosuke. Not long after, Gekugahara in combat mode came and fought Kyosuke. Gekugahara detected Kyosuke as her enemy, but before she could attack, Kyosuke immediately split the robot's body with his fire sword. Meanwhile, Kirigiri and the others were dismantling all the traps set by Izoi. Ruruka suddenly pretended to fall into the pile of traps and took a remote. Not long after, Sakakura entered the room. He immediately beat everyone there. Finally, Sakakura's forbidden actions were discovered. Sakakura, a former boxer, had never used his fists since the start of the game. It turned out that his forbidden act was fighting with bare hands. Kizakura succeeded in luring Sakakura, so he fell into the trap set by Izoi. Seeing Kirigiri walking to the middle of the room, Ruruka immediately pressed the remote she had taken earlier. A large hole was created and Kirigiri almost fell into the hole, but luckily she was saved by Kizakura. He sacrificed himself by carrying out his forbidden action, which was opening his right fist. He did that because he once had a promise with Kirigiri's father, Jin, that he would protect Kirigiri no matter what happened. Kizakura's body fell into the hole. Ruruka continued her action to finish off everyone there. She forced Sakakura to eat her sweets and manages to control him. Kirigiri finally realized that the person who killed Izoi was Ruruka because she was acting very strangely earlier. Kirigiri tried to calm Sakakura down so he didn't attack her. Kirigiri said that she would reveal this murder mystery as long as Sakakura didn't kill her. Kirigiri concluded that Izoi died because of his forbidden actions. When Kirigiri examined Izoi's corpse, there were signs of poison from the bracelet. To confirm what the forbidden action was, Kirigiri tasted Izoi's saliva, which turned out to be sweet. It meant Ruruka forced Izoi to eat her sweets. Therefore, Izoi's action was to prohibit him from eating anything. Kirigiri said that Ruruka's motive for killing Izoi was because of the secret door in that room. Kirigiri guessed Ruruka's forbidden action, which was letting someone out of the game arena. Returning to a few hours earlier, when Izoi found the secret door, he told Ruruka that he knew about her forbidden actions. To protect Ruruka, he set many traps in the room so that no one managed to escape from there. However, because Ruruka was afraid of being betrayed by Izoi, she killed Izoi by kissing him. That was when Ruruka gave sweets mouth to mouth. Izoi, who really liked Ruruka, could only accept being killed by his own girlfriend. Kirigiri and Midorei then left the room. Sakakura was still trying to open the secret door. Meanwhile, Ruruka persuaded him not to come out of there. Outside the building, Togami, Hagakure, and the others blew up the rubble blocking the building's entrance. Togami's troops immediately entered the building. However, there was one person who was careless by touching a woman whom he thought had fainted. It turned out the woman was a robot. The explosives in the building were activated. The foundation of the building collapsed and sank to the bottom. Meanwhile, Sakakura opened the secret door. But to his surprise, when he looked out, they were under the sea. The reason Kirigiri didn't come out was because she had realized that it was a fake exit. She knew from the start that they were in another building. So from the start of the game, they were all moved to the lower building, which was made similar to the upper building. When the building above collapsed, the place where she was now sank even further until finally they could see the sea. Kirigiri suspected that the mastermind behind all this was Kyosuke because he was the one who built this building. Kirigiri then met Neji. Neji was still thinking about Komura's words, saying that one of his friends died because of him. Kirigiri encouraged Neji because whatever happened, Neji must not give up. After Sakakura couldn't get out of the fake exit, he met Kyosuke. But suddenly Kyosuke attacked Sakakura. The time in this round ran out, and those who were still alive fell asleep. In this round, Ruka died. Negi was happy because his group could still survive. However, when they saw that Kirijiri didn't wake up, they realized that Kirijiri also died in this round. When they saw Kirijiri's forbidden actions, they were all shocked. Kirijiri's forbidden action was to let Neji live until the 4th round. Negi was shocked and he cried because Kirijiri died because of him. Kyosuke said to the speaker that the hope that Negi had was just empty talk. He challenged Negi to a meeting. Kyosuke managed to find out about everyone's forbidden actions because he took the fake Gekko Bahara's cell phone. Time went back to the Despair arc in Midoriya Ryota's childhood. He was always bullied by his friends since childhood, until he watched an anime that managed to change his life. Therefore, he studied hard to make good anime. To his success, he was recruited into Hope's Peak Academy. Meanwhile, Yukizome Sensei taught in the reserve department for half a year and finally returned to the main department. She infiltrated the school because she wanted to find out what the funds from the reserve department were used for. She heard that the funds were used to fund this secret project. She asked Sakakura, a security chief, for help to steal the ID card of one of the Kibugumin College Foundation administrators. Sakakura agreed even though he knew the risk that if they were found out they would be immediately fired. Yukizome also knew that Hajime, who was beaten by Sakakura at that time, was suddenly expelled for no reason. This made her even more suspicious of the school. Yukizome Sensei returned to the main department and officially became the homeroom teacher for 1B Class 77th. Meanwhile, Kizakura focused on recruiting a new class, which was Negi's class in Season 1. Yukizome Sensei entered the class and was greeted warmly by all the students. From here, it was known that the fat Ryota Midoriya in Class 1B was the fake Midoriya. The real Midoriya was desperately making an anime. They had worked together from the start. The real Midoriya wanted to stay focused on making good anime so that it could make other people happy. This made him forget to eat and not take care of his health. Then the scene moved to the airport, where the antagonist in the Danganronpa universe was shown, Enoshima Junko. She went to the airport to pick up her older sister, Akusaba Mukuro. They were both selected to enter the 78th class of Hope's Peak Academy. Junko, with the nickname Fashion Diva, and Akusaba, with the nickname Soldier, were the masterminds of the riots in Danganronpa. Meanwhile, Midoriya kept forcing himself to stay up late until he finally collapsed. The fake Midoriya immediately went to school to ask Mikan, who was a nurse, for help. Arriving home, Mikan asked Midoriya to rest first. In a room, Hajime was put in a capsule. His body would be implanted with all the talents of the students who had ever existed at Hope's Peak Academy. He would be the Hope. He would become super strong, but at the cost of having all his emotions and personality removed. After Hajime woke up, he had a new identity and personality named Ezuru Kamukura, after the name of the founder of Hope's Peak Academy. Meanwhile, Chiaki, who didn't know the truth, kept waiting for Hajime in front of the reserve department building for half a year. She still hoped to meet Hajime. The next day in Class 1B, all the students were busy moving because next week, they would all become seniors and move to another room. Meanwhile, Sakakura managed to steal the ID card of one of the school foundation administrators. Yukizome would later use the card to infiltrate the school building. At that time, Sakakura noticed Yukizome, who seemed to really love Kyosuke. Sakakura felt annoyed because he didn't have another chance. Class 1B 77th had officially occupied the new building. Meanwhile, Nagito was still suspended since the bombing case. That night, Yukizome infiltrated the school. She wanted to find out about the secret project. Yukizome then entered the room of one of the school officials. Through the contents of the computer, she finally found out about the Kamukura project given to Hajime. Yukizome was shocked because experimental testing on humans was not permitted. Somewhere, Junko apparently succeeded in kidnapping one of the school's top officials. She finally got the information about the Kamukura project. After successfully getting the information, she and Mukuro went straight to school that night. To open the secret door, they gouged out the eyes of the security guards at that place. In that room was Hajime, now known as Kamukura. Junko intended to invite him to collaborate. However, Kamukura was completely uninterested. Junko tried to provoke him. She said that if Kamukura wanted to join her, then something fun would happen. Kamukura immediately beat Junko until she fainted. Before leaving, Kamukura said that he would wait for Junko because he wanted to know what Junko wanted to show him. The next day, Junko woke up from fainting. She was in the school hospital. When she came out, she ran into Ryota Midoriya, who wanted to control the health at the hospital. Junko immediately said to Midoriya that their meeting was destined. In the future arc, Negi was still saddened by Kirijiri's death. Kyosuke invited Negi to prove whose hope was the greatest. Neji finally went to meet Kyosuke. Neji still adhered to Kirijiri's words before she died, which was to continue to believe in hope no matter what happened. Kyosuke and Negi were two people who actually wanted to eradicate despair, but in their ways. The two of them met and their duel began. However, Neji could only dodge because he only used his bare hands. Meanwhile, Kyosuke used his sword. Neji led Kyosuke to a room. He flooded the room with water and shocked it with electric cables, but Kyosuke managed to avoid it. Kyosuke managed to shoot Chief Tengen's crossbow at Neji. Neji then let out smoke and immediately ran away from there. However, because Neji was injured and his blood was all over the place, Kyosuke would easily find him. Amid the smoke, Neji pulled Kyosuke so that he fell with him. It turned out that everything was planned by Neji. He knew that in this room, Kyosuke wouldn't be able to kill him because Neji was aware that Kyosuke's forbidden action was opening the door. So if Kyosuke killed Neji, then he would be trapped in that room because he won't be able to open the door. Kyosuke had the principle to eliminate despair even if he had to sacrifice everyone. Meanwhile, Neji didn't think like that. Kyosuke already knew the true identity of the attacker, which Chief Tengen told him before he died. Since Chief Tengen's forbidden act was telling lies, then what he said must be true. Chief Tengen said that the attackers were everyone. So Kyosuke assumed that everyone had fallen into despair. Therefore, he wanted to eliminate everyone there. However, Kyosuke was annoyed to hear Negi's words, saying that whatever happened, he still felt grateful to have met Kirijiri. Neji said that while crying, and Kyosuke gasped. After that, Asahina and Midoriya came. They brought Kirijiri's notebook. The book contained many things that Kirijiri had solved. In the book, it was written that all the people who had been victims of murder had no trace of the murderer at all. There were only traces of the victim's hands and feet. All stab wounds were only in areas where the victim's hands could reach. So Kirijiri concluded that there was no attacker at all. Everyone who died committed suicide. Kirijiri depicted a map of the murder locations of each victim. There must be a monitor next to the victim. Neji was determined to prove it directly and asked the others to tie him near the monitor. If there really was something, he wouldn't be able to kill himself. The time for the 5th round was up, and everyone fell asleep. But a few seconds later, Neji woke up. It turned out that the bracelet detected who was closest to the monitor and would be woken up. The monitor then displayed footage of Monokuma and a brainwashing video. When Neji saw that, he immediately hallucinated. In his head, his dead friends appeared, forcing Neji to commit suicide. Neji became seriously depressed and screamed about wanting to commit suicide. The monitor dropped a knife. Before Neji could commit suicide, Sakakura came to his aid. Sakakura apparently wasn't dead yet. He could still live and wake up because he had cut off the hand that had the bracelet. So the truth of all this was revealed. All the victims committed suicide because they had watched brainwashing videos. Sakakura wanted to make amends for all his past mistakes. He, who had lost a lot of blood, wanted to go to the power room inside the fake secret door. Previously, he didn't want to be honest that the mastermind behind all this was Enoshima Junko. He hid it from Kyosuke for some reason. Neji came to Kyosuke and the others. He told him everything he had experienced. They took apart all the monitors, and sure enough, all the monitors had knives. Kyosuke said that apart from himself, Chief Tengen was the person who also had the authority to modify this building even down to the basement floor. So most likely, Chief Tengen was the mastermind behind all this. Kyosuke suspected that Chief Tengen was the person spreading despair. Kyosuke also suspected Yukizome and Sakakura because they had always said that Junko was innocent. He concluded that the two of them had become part of the despair. Sakakura, who only had a little energy, went to the power room. He turned off all the electricity in the building so that all the monitors would turn off. If only they had known this earlier, there would not have been so many suicide victims. Finally, the bracelets they were wearing came off. Kyosuke immediately hurriedly ran to help Sakakura, who was dying in the power room. But he was too late. Sakakura was already dead because he had lost blood. He was curious about who could make such a brainwashing video. Meiji asked Midoriya if he knew anything since Midoriya was an expert animator. But Midoriya said he was innocent. He said that Enoshima Junko was at fault for taking advantage of his abilities. Midoriya then got a time message from the dead Chief Tengen. Returning to the Despair arc after Junko met Midoriya, she asked what Midoriya's abilities were. He answered that he was an animator. But when Junko heard that, she insulted anime. Midoriya, who was angry when he heard this, said that the anime he made was different from other anime. And sure enough, when Junko watched the anime made by Midoriya, she immediately bursted into tears. Even Mukuro was crying loudly. Midoriya said that he made this anime with a technique that could affect the brains of people who watched it. Junko was excited to meet someone who would help her further propaganda. Meanwhile, Nagito, who was still suspended from school, had an accident while boarding a plane. However, because he was a lucky student, he was the only one who managed to survive. A week after Midoriya and Junko's meeting, Midoriya disappeared. The fake Midoriya asked Meiken to check on Midoriya's house. When Meiken went to Midoriya's house, she met Mukuro, who was preparing Midoriya's things that he had left behind. Finally, Mukuro took Meiken with her. Midoriya and Junko turned out to be in a secret place that Junko made so that Midoriya could focus on working for her. Midori, who had been incited by Junko's words, followed everything Junko ordered. That night, Junko was ready to carry out her biggest action. She went to Kamakura to show him something interesting. They then went to the old school building and went up to the 3rd floor. There, Junko had gathered the student council students. She forced them to kill each other. If they didn't want to, then Mukuro would kill them. But no one paid attention. Mukuro then killed one of the students as a trigger. Junko had brought files containing their disgrace and all their secrets. Then there was a student who was provoked because he didn't want his secret to be revealed. Finally, all the students' council in the class killed each other to defend themselves. This class was the class that appeared in Season 1, which was destroyed and had lots of bloodstains. This event was the beginning of the greatest and worst despair that humanity had ever experienced. The reason Junko invited Kamakura was so that he would be the one accused of killing them all. Later, the school would be blamed for carrying out dangerous human experiments. Principal Jin, who heard the news, became frightened. He was afraid that his school would be destroyed because of that. Principal Jin already had a hunch, so he asked Hizakura to protect his daughter, Kyoko Kirigiri. After that, Junko edited the video of the murder in class with a brainwashing effect using techniques taught by Midori. Anyone who saw this would become radical and follow Junko's ideology. Junko first distributed the video of the murder and human experimentation to the school environment. However, the video had not been edited. The video showed funds from the reserve department being used to fund dangerous human experiments and ultimately killing the students' council. All the students from the reserve department who saw that became angry. They all demonstrated in front of the main department building. Meanwhile, Midori, who was busy drawing, suddenly noticed Mikan and felt that there was something strange about her. It turned out that Mikan had watched the murder video which had been edited by Junko. Midori, who saw that, wanted to run away from there. However, Junko found out about his intentions and threatened to harm all his friends. The scene shifted to 2B Class 77th. They all wondered why Mikan didn't come to school. Nagito, who had just entered school, came and said that he saw Mikan entering through the west door of the school, so they all decided to look for Mikan there. When Yukazome-sensei came to class, it was empty. She only found a note that they were looking for Mikan. Yukazome-sensei was shocked and immediately rushed to look for them. She was worried about their safety. Meanwhile, Sakakura was trying to prevent students from the reserve department from entering the main building. Kyosuke also came to help him. On the other side, Chiaki and Nagito tried to find Mikan near the statue of the school's founder. It turned out that Nagito, who was a lucky student, accidentally found a secret door to the room under the statue. They found Midori, who was forced to make a brainwashing video for Junko. Junko finally met Nagito, the lucky student. Junko couldn't rely on Mukuro because she was fighting Pikoyama outside. Nagito carried a gun and threatened Junko to surrender. But unexpectedly, Kamukura was there. When Nagito wanted to shoot him, it suddenly couldn't be used. Kamukura then whispered to Nagito that if it was just luck, he had it too. The gun was seized and he shot Nagito. But Nagito was still lucky. The bullet only hit his electronic book. Nagito was only slightly injured and fainted. Seeing that, Midori immediately ran away. He met Yukazome-sensei outside. He told her that Nagito and Chiaki were in danger. Yukazome-sensei ran fast towards there. Chiaki recognized Kamukura as Hajime. But unfortunately, Hajime's personality had disappeared and he didn't remember Chiaki at all. Yukazome-sensei arrived and ordered Chiaki to take Nagito away. Yukazome-sensei said that she would be the one to face Kamukura. Chiaki then took Nagito to class. All the students were there because they couldn't find Mikan. Chiaki said that Yukazome-sensei was in danger. Not long after, Mikan came carrying Pekoyama, who was covered in wounds. Nagito and Pekoyama had asked them not to go there. However, they ignored their words and still went to save Yukazome-sensei. That was when the fake Midori admitted that he wasn't the real Midori. He said that he wanted to save the real Midori. Yukazome-sensei was captured. She was forced to watch a student from the reserve department who had been brainwashed to commit suicide in front of her. Yukazome-sensei felt frightened seeing that. She was forced to watch an edited video of the students' council killing each other. Yukazome-sensei finally fell into despair. Meanwhile, the real Midori ran far away because he was afraid of Junko. He was afraid of being influenced by Junko's despair. He finally arrived in a river. Meanwhile, Sakakura had confronted Junko, who had brought her subordinates, who were students from the reserve department who had been brainwashed. Sakakura was beaten and finally cornered. Junko then used a cunning method. She knew Sakakura's secret. It turned out that Sakakura secretly liked Kyosuke. Because he was afraid that his secret would be leaked, he was forced to obey Junko's words. Junko forced Sakakura to keep his mouth shut about all this if he wanted his secret to be safe. Meanwhile, students from Class 2B ran in the rain to save Yukazome-sensei. But when it was time to arrive, Mikan pushed Chiaki into another room. When the others asked where Chiaki was, Mikan said that Chiaki was resting for a while in the back because she was tired. In that other room, Chiaki met Yukazome Sensei, who led her to another room. Chiaki didn't yet know that Yukazome Sensei had turned evil. Mikan then led the others to another room, which was the same room as the trial in Danganronpa 1. Yukazome Sensei pushed Chiaki into a maze. In the trial room, the other students were forced to watch Chiaki try to get out of the trap-filled maze. The video that was broadcast was also added with a brainwashing effect by Junko. In the end, they saw Chiaki dead, stabbed by many spears. They all eventually fell into despair. When she was dying, Chiaki met Kamukura. When he saw Chiaki die, Kamukura felt that Hajime's soul appeared a little inside of him. After he met with Junko, Sakakura met Kyosuke. He said that Junko was innocent, even though Kyosuke already had a lot of evidence that points to Junko. Yukazome Sensei also came and said that it was true that Junko was innocent. Even though Kyosuke's logic believed that Junko was guilty, he chose to believe in his friends. Then Class 2B students were in class together with Yukazome Sensei. Even though they had all fallen into despair, none of them felt anything, even though they had seen Chiaki die tragically. Yukazome Sensei said that today was graduation day. Meanwhile, outside the building, the situation got worse. More and more students were being brainwashed and becoming more brutal. They burned everything and killed everyone they came across. Even students from Class 2A were also killed. The building eventually caught fire. The students from 2B Class 77th left and would spread despair throughout the world. In just a few days, there were already 3,000 casualties. Principal Jin still didn't know who was behind all this. Principal Jin had high hopes for Kirigiri, who had taken refuge in the old school building. Principal Jin decided to stay there to accompany the surviving students. Meanwhile, Kizakura and Chief Tengen left the school. They saw students who had been brainwashed committing suicide by jumping from the building because Junko told them to. All the students came from the reserved apartment. Meanwhile, students from Class 1B 78th occupied the old school building. They were students in Danganronpa Season 1 who were also Junko's classmates. Because they knew there was huge unrest out there, they locked themselves in class to be safe. It seemed like Junko already had an inkling that Nagi had greater luck than Negido. In the remains of a building fire, Kyosuke saved Yukazome. He didn't realize that Yukazome had secretly turned into despair. In the future arc was shown several years after the worst tragedy. Yukazome joined an organization formed by Chief Tengen. She provided a file containing a video of the trigger for the most horrific tragedy of despair in human history, created by Midori. There was also another file created by Junko, which caused students from the reserved apartment to commit suicide. Chief Tengen still didn't know Yukazome's cunning intentions. He then watched the video, making Chief Tengen fall into despair. The scene changed to when Midori got a time message from the dead Chief Tengen. The message contained a video message from Chief Tengen admitting that he deliberately got people from the Future Foundation to kill each other. That was because he had also spread despair. Midori, who saw this, was very disappointed and felt devastated. He had caused the person he trusted most to go astray. Midori felt guilty and wanted to take responsibility. He was determined to stop this all. When Junko started her action, he ran away in fear like a coward. Now he wanted to make amends by spreading another brainwashing video, which he called Hope Video, a video that spread hope. When people who had fallen into despair see this video, they would wake up, but the consequence was that their emotions would all disappear. All feelings of anger, envy, sadness, and happiness would no longer exist in humanity. Asahina wanted to stop Midori. However, Midori hypnotized Asahina with another video. Midori could also use it to brainwash people. Since Asahina's bracelet was off, she could finally use her talent. Asahina's previous forbidden action was using her talent. Asahina was ordered by Midori to arrest Nagi. Midori then went to a room that could spread signals throughout the world. In the middle of his way to go there, he met a soldier who would save him. However, Midori hypnotized him and asked him to share this hypnotic video with the other army. The army was ordered by Midori to thwart anyone who would stop him. Kyosuke came and helped Nagi to escape from Asahina, who had been hypnotized. They finally worked together to stop Midori from changing humans to no longer had a sense of humanity. Midori went to the pavilion, a place that would spread the video of hope throughout the world. It took Midori half an hour to successfully distribute the video. Neji was almost caught by the brainwashed army who were guarding outside, but luckily he was saved by Hagakure and Togami, who brought their elite troops. They finally succeeded in defeating the army. They both believed that Neji could stop Midori. We finally came to the Hope arc, which was the completion of the Danganronpa universe. Meiji then followed Midori to stop him, escorted by Togami's elite troops. When they arrived at the pavilion, they had to face a brainwashed army. But unexpectedly, reinforcements came from the Class 77th, Nagido and his friends. They would help Meiji to stop Midori. All the 77th students brought out their respective talents to face the opposing team. Kamukura, who also came with a new appearance and had changed for the better, came to help. It turned out that Negi's efforts to save them were all successful. They no longer fell into the abyss of despair. After they defeated the opposing forces, Kamukura and the others entered the pavilion to persuade Minare to stop all this. Minare said that he was very sorry for helping Junko in the past to spread despair, but all of his classmates didn't blame him. They invited Minare to atone for this sin together. Hearing this, Minare melted. He stopped the spread of the brainwashing hope video. Negi, who was outside the room, heard all that and he felt relieved. All the children from the class 77th sacrificed themselves to become scapegoats in the riot the Future Foundation, so that everyone would think that it was their doing. They would never know that the mastermind behind all this was the chairman of the Future Foundation himself. After everything was finished, Kamukura, Nagito, and all their classmates went sailing to find the truth of the world. They wanted to know if there was a world out there that had survived unaffected by despair. Minare also joined them. Out of nowhere, Maiken said that she found a medicine bottle next to Siko's corpse. The medicine could slow down the spread of poison in the bracelet, but it was empty. It meant someone had taken the drug. Unexpectedly, that person was Kirijiri, who had drunk it before she died. Several months after the incident, the Future Foundation rebuilt Hope's Peak Academy, where Neji became the new principal and Kirijiri loyally accompanied Negi. This is the end of Danganronpa 3. Thank you so much for staying in this channel and watching our videos. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel so we can keep you updated with our latest contents. See you in the next video.